When a man forgets who he is, the world doesn't remind him gently, it consumes him. He becomes prey, not to lions or wolves, but to expectations, to illusions, to comforts dressed in silk and chains. He begins to shrink, not because he lacks strength, but because he abandons the sacred fire within, the fire that once knew silence better than applause, that once hunted meaning before pleasure, that once walked into storms, not because he was fearless, but because he refused to kneel. Be the man no embrace can weaken. Not because love is your enemy, but because you know what it means to stand alone, to be unbent by affection that comes with conditions, to see clearly when warmth is used as a bribe and not a gift. There is a kind of man who remembers the ancient oath not, the one written in words, but the one etched in bone, the oath to protect the fortress of his mind, the vow to never sell his vision for acceptance, the promise to keep walking when sirens sing of comfort. The world will always reward the man who forgets what pain taught him, who forgets what stillness revealed, who forgets the agony of truth in exchange for the anesthesia of belonging. They'll call you evolved when you've surrendered your instinct. They'll call you sensitive when you ignore your gut. They'll praise you when you betray your soul, but only until you break. Then they'll move on, like they always do, to the next hollow man ready to be filled with someone else's script. But you are different. You are the man who returns, the man who goes back into the forest of his shadow, who digs up the bones of his former selves, who speaks to his demons not to negotiate, but to understand the map they carved in his psyche. Jung said the shadow is 90% gold. Most men run from it. You mine it. You know that love without a spine is dependency, that passion without discipline is self-harm, that empathy without discernment is manipulation's favorite prey, and so you train quietly, daily, not with fury, but with devotion, not for applause, but for precision. You know the world isn't gentle with lost men. You know that a man without purpose is a weapon waiting to be used by corporations, by ideologies, by relationships that feed on his confusion. So you become sharp, not bitter sharp, a blade forged in solitude, tempered in truth. You don't chase validation. You don't perform masculinity. You embody it in stillness, in action, in restraint, in presence. You don't speak much, not because you have nothing to say, but because you know that real power whispers. And when you do speak, the room listens not because of volume, but because of weight. The world teaches boys to trade their backbone for belonging. But you remember real belonging begins when you refuse to betray yourself, when you walk away, even if it means walking alone. When you stop auditioning for love and start demanding alignment, when you no longer shrink to fit inside someone else's idea of safety. This isn't about domination. This is about direction. This is about becoming immovable, not because you are rigid, but because your roots run deep. You've made peace with solitude. You've made peace with rejection. You've made peace with the storm. So now nothing can move you, not lust, not praise, not threat, not silence. They'll call you cold. Let them. Fire feels cold to those who live in shadows. They'll say you've changed. Of course you have. That was the point. The man who cannot be weakened by an embrace is not lovelish, is sovereign. He gives his heart without losing his edge. He surrenders without submitting. He holds space without collapsing. Be that man. The one who remembers his mythic self. The one who integrates his monster. The one who walks away from false peace to wage war on the chaos within. Because once you conquer that battlefield, no one else's war can claim you. Let the others kneel for comfort. You rise. You rise because you no longer answer to the world's narratives. The scripts handed down by broken men, raised by broken systems, speaking of broken dreams dressed up as goals. You don't want what they chase. You see the trap now, the polished cage of success, the sterile prison of politeness, the emasculation parading as enlightenment. You rise because you've buried too many versions of yourself to turn back now. The boy who wanted approval, the teenager who confused attention for worth, the young man who mistook tolerance for love. They're dead now, not forgotten, but forgiven. Their bones lay beneath your stride, and with every step you honor their death with purpose. You don't need to prove your masculinity to anyone. You've outgrown that circus. You don't need louder words or a bigger stage. Your life is the declaration. Your presence is the warning. You are not here to be nice. You are here to be true. And truth, in a time of mass delusion, is violent. Not because it harms, but because it threatens. It threatens every lie people use to avoid themselves. And you, the man who will not be weakened, are the most dangerous threat of all, not because you wish harm on others, but because you will not harm yourself to keep others comfortable. You have chosen clarity over popularity, silence over noise, solitude over fake tribes. You no longer participate in conversations that demand you forget your soul just to be liked. You walk away not because you lack empathy, but because you understand that peace must first be claimed within before it can be offered without. Carl Jung warned, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And now, finally, you're living that privilege. You've entered the holy war of becoming. Not through performance, not through mimicry, but through confrontation. You face the parts of yourself you once buried. The hunger, the rage, the fear, the chaos, you brought them into the fire, not to burn them, but to forge them. Because here's the truth. A man who hasn't faced his darkness will always fear the dark in others. He'll mistake strength for cruelty, boundaries for rejection, presence for threat. But you've gone into the crypts of your soul. You've sat with your shadow. You've made love to your wounds. You've kissed your ego on the forehead and told it, you're no longer driving. That's why no embrace can weaken you, because you're not clinging to it for identity. You're not using someone else's body to numb your lack of purpose. You're not drowning in intimacy just to forget your own name. Love is no longer a hiding place. It is a meeting ground, a sacred battlefield where two warriors remove their armor, not their integrity. You do not lose yourself in her. You meet her fully, fiercely, honestly. You hold her not to feel whole, but because you are whole. You offer her your backbone, not your begging. And if she leaves, you mourn, but you do not crumble. You do not fall apart, because the man you are does not depend on who stays. He is rooted, relentless, risen. There is nothing more powerful than a man who no longer fears the consequences of being himself. No label can define him. No tactic can manipulate him. No comfort can seduce him. No threat can bend him. He is sovereign, not in arrogance, but in awareness. He bows to no illusion. He kneels only to truth. Be the man who walks into every room with silence like thunder, who looks into every eye with the calm of a storm already conquered, who speaks only when there's weight in the words and purpose in the breath. Be the man who doesn't need to explain his path, because his energy already answers every question. This is the path of the initiated. The man reborn in truth, the man who stopped running, the man who remembered his soul. And from that soul, there is no turning back. No turning back, because once you've tasted the raw purity of your own essence, everything else is noise. Once you've seen yourself beneath the masks, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer dilute your being to fit into a version of reality meant to tame you. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be primal. Not primitive, but primal. Rooted in the essence that came before civilization, before titles, before the world told you what a man is supposed to be. You are the stillness before the quake, the pause before the arrow. You are the discipline that holds the chaos, the wildness that respects the structure, the storm that dances inside the eye of control. And no one sees it until they feel it, until they realize that you are not interested in attention, you are interested in alignment. You've realized that strength is not in dominance, but in discernment, in knowing when to step forward and when to disappear, when to speak and when to listen, when to fight and when to let it burn. There is more danger in your silence than in 1,000 screams, because you're no longer seeking justice in noise, you are enacting it in presence. Every man must ask himself, what have I built that cannot be taken from me? If your answer is money, titles, applause, or her love, then you are still building on sand, because all of that can vanish. But the man who has forged himself in solitude, in truth, in fire, he remains. Even when stripped of everything, he remains. That is what the embrace cannot weaken, not because the embrace is wrong, but because you no longer collapse into it. You lean into it without losing your vertical. You give yourself without giving yourself away. You love with open eyes, not in fantasy, but in clarity. And in that love, you are not afraid to say no. You are not afraid to walk. You are not afraid to be misunderstood. Because the man who needs to be understood is still negotiating with his wounds. You are done negotiating. You have accepted the price of authenticity. You have paid it in full, with nights of silence, with the burn of separation, with the weight of standing alone while others bowed for comfort. And now you wear that scar-like armor, not to fight, but to remind yourself that you never need to shrink again. You've looked your addictions in the eye, not just the vices, but the subtle ones. The addiction to being needed, to being the fixer, to being the good guy. You've burned it all, not out of hate, but out of reverence. Reverence for the man you were before you were told how to behave. This is not the awakening of a boy. This is the return of a king. And not a king in the fairy tales they sold you, but a true king. One who governs himself, one who doesn't seek a crown but becomes the throne. One who protects without controlling. One who leads by being, not by demanding. And now your eyes see it all, the manipulation wrapped in romance, the weakness dressed as wisdom, the lies told in the name of love. You see it, you name it, and you walk right through it. Not to escape, but to evolve. Because your soul was never meant to be caged. Your mind was never meant to be hijacked by culture. Your body was never meant to be drained by drama. You are not here to participate in the theater of broken archetypes. You are here to redefine them. Every step you take now is not just for you. It is for every man who forgot, who gave in, who fell and stayed down. You rise for him too, not to save him, but to show him it's still possible. To remind him of the ancient truth buried in his bones. Be the man no embrace can weaken, not because you fear love, but because you have become it. Fierce, true, undeniable. Undeniable because now you carry your truth like gravity. You don't speak it, you are it. Your silence weighs more than empty words. Your presence unsettles the false and empowers the real. You walk into rooms and the air changes not because you try to command it, but because you no longer need to. You've stopped asking for permission to exist fully. You've stopped waiting for someone to recognize your worth. You've stopped bargaining your soul for proximity, for praise, for peace that always came at the cost of your own clarity. You've outgrown the cages disguised as connections. You've burned the bridges that led back to your old self. And now you build altars, not homes, because nothing owns you, not even your past. There's a moment every man must face when the world offers him a deal. Comfort in exchange for truth, belonging in exchange for self-respect, safety in exchange for silence. Most take the deal. Most bow, but not you. You looked the world in the eye and said, I remember who I am. That memory, that return is not gentle. It is violent in the way nature is violent, in the way a volcano is not angry but inevitable. You didn't become strong because life was kind. You became strong because it wasn't. Because life broke your illusions, stripped your masks, and left you naked with your shadow. And instead of hiding from it, you claimed it. You stopped chasing women who didn't see you. You stopped chasing roles that didn't fit you. You stopped chasing meaning in places that fed your ego but starved your soul. And in that stillness, when all the noise fell away, you found it. The pulse beneath the chaos. The rhythm of your own becoming. And now, when they come with flattery or fury, when they come with seduction or shame, when they come with affection or abandonment, it doesn't shake you. Because your verse was never on the table. Your path was never up for debate. Your mission was never about approval. You are the man who can walk away from anything except himself. Because you truly know that nothing outside of you completes you. Nothing external makes you. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to choose. And this choosing, this radical, grounded choosing is what makes you untouchable, not in arrogance, not in withdrawal, but in mastery. Mastery of self, mastery of emotion, mastery of presence. You are no longer reactive. You are intentional. You are no longer pulled by chaos. You are anchored in purpose. You are no longer tempted by illusion. You are loyal to your inner law. Be the man who cannot be bribed by beauty, who cannot be weakened by loneliness, who cannot be hijacked by charm. Be the man who smiles at seduction, not with judgment, but with knowing. Be the man who sees through performance with bitterness, but with clarity. Because now, you see everything. You see the code beneath the culture, the need beneath the manipulation, the wound beneath the noise. You see it all, and you remain still, not passive present, not detached, disciplined, not number wake. This is the new strength, the new power, the new masculinity, not rooted in force, but in depth, not in domination, but in direction, not in rage, but in resolve. And when love finds you, and it will not come to complete you. It will come to complement you. It will not ask you to dim your fire. It will ask you to share your light. It will not come to fill a void. It will come to meet your fullness. Because only a man who does not need love can finally receive it. And only a man who does not fear loss can fully give. You are that man now. Unshaken, unbought, undivided. Be him. Stay him. Let the world change around you, but never again let it change you. Never again let it change you. Not because you resist growth, but because your foundation is no longer negotiable. You have bled for this clarity. You have died to old selves that clung to shadows and illusions. What you are now is not the result of inspiration, but of confrontation. You didn't read your way here. You didn't affirm your way here. You bled, you broke, you rebuilt. And now your soul is scarred with sacred geometry, the map of your resurrection. You don't need a crowd to feel worthy. You don't need her validation to feel desired. You don't need applause to feel powerful. Your worth was never a democracy. It was forged in the solitude of nights where silence was louder than screams. In the stillness of mornings where the mirror asked, "Are you willing to live without pretending today?" And you said yes. Every day you said yes. Even when it hurt, especially when it hurt, you gave up the illusion of peace for the reality of integrity. You gave up the high of being liked for the deep of being respected by yourself. Now, you walk differently. You speak differently. You think in longer timelines. You act with sacred indifference to people, but to the bait they throw, the manipulation, the drama, the backhanded love. You no longer bite, not because you're afraid, but because you're done starving. Your hunger is different now. You crave soul over spectacle, depth over display. You crave connection that doesn't depend on who you pretend to be. You crave truth, even when it burns, especially when it burns. Because now you understand the fire does not destroy you. It reveals you. That's why no embrace can weaken you. You've outgrown the need to be held by anyone who cannot hold your truth. You've outgrown the seduction of safety. You've outgrown the traps wrapped in tenderness. You've learned to spot the lie behind the kiss, the demand behind the compliment, the fear behind the promise. But you are not cynical. You are sovereign. You are not bitter. You are boundaried. You are not closed. You are calibrated. And when you open now, it's by choice. When you give now, it's from fullness. When you love now, it's without losing yourself. This is the revolution of the masculine. Not louder, not angrier, not more forceful, just anchored, aligned, awake. You become unshakable, not by force, but by presence, by knowing that everything you need is already within, that nothing external can touch the kingdom you've built in silence, that no woman, no weapon, no wound can undo the man who lives from truth. And yes, they will come. They always come for your energy, your clarity, your unwavering stance. They'll come dressed in love or loneliness, in admiration or anxiety. They'll want a piece of you. They'll want to feel what you feel. They'll say they see you, but you will know. You will feel the tremor in their voice, the uncertainty in their eyes, the fracture in their story. And you will not judge, but you will not bend, because the man you've become cannot be bowed. He cannot be copied. He cannot be packaged or performed. He's not a product. He's a presence, forged, earned, embodied. Be the man who smiles in silence when others panic in noise. Be the man who holds his posture while others chase validation. Be the man who disappears, not because he fears conflict, but because he refuses to fight battles that do not matter. You do not move unless it's toward alignment. You do not act unless it's in integrity. You do not stay unless your soul is home. And that makes you rare. And they'll feel it in the way you speak, in the way you listen, in the way you live, because you've learned the ultimate truth. The world cannot take from a man who no longer gives himself away. And that is who you are now, whole, rooted, risen. So now, stand still. Let the world spin. Let them chase. Let them fall into the noise. You are finished with that life. You do not chase what cannot meet you. You do not lower your fire to warm those who fear their own light. You do not wait to be chosen. You choose. You are the man no embrace can weaken, because you are no longer seduced by illusion and no longer broken by rejection. You've walked through the desert of your own forgetting and returned with memory carved into your spine. You remember now what you are, not what they said you were, not the broken mirrors or borrowed names. The truth beneath the armor. You are not what she sees. You are not what they fear. You are not the label, the job, the applause. You are what remains when all of it is taken. You are the man who is whole even when alone, who speaks with silence, who loves with spine, who walks into every room like a verdict. You're not perfect, but you are present. You are not unscarred, but you are undefeated. And so you bow to no one, not out of pride, but out of memory. Because once, long ago, before the masks and mirrors, before the seductions and the chains, there lived a boy who was whole. And now that boy has returned not as a child, but as a sovereign, as a man who remembers, as a man who reclaims, as a man who is no longer available to anything that demands he forget. So let them call you cold. Let them say you've changed. Let them misunderstand your distance, your silence, your fire. You owe them nothing. But to yourself, to your soul, you owe everything. Now go. Not to seek, not to chase, but to reign. To walk in truth. To move in presence. To love from power. Be the man no embrace can weaken, because you have finally become the man who no longer betrays himself. And there is no force in this world more terrifying, more untouchable, more free than that.